Good afternoon, traders. Joseph here from Eightcap. Welcome to this week's wrap-up video. So we've look, to put it bluntly, some markets have been pretty flat, but we've seen good opportunities and movements on other markets. So we've had an interesting week on the Japanese yen, opposite direction to the last interesting week we saw on the Japanese yen. We've seen stock indexes moving lower. We've seen up and down movement from the dollar and risk currencies to the dollar. We're looking at the pound weekly in front of us now. Obviously, that was probably one of the better performers this week, but we have seen some other moves across, but we'll get to a few of them in a moment. Gold's had a very good week this week, and there's been a few factors there. So, sorry, I meant to say it's had a fantastic day yesterday, but we can see there on the weekly chart, it pulled back from quite a decline lower to set new weekly highs, and just look at that trend. Hey, it's a really quite a beautiful thing to look at, especially if you are a buyer in gold. So some of the key factors this week, we had Chinese GDP, so that was a bit of that was revised down. They were expecting 1.6%. It came in at 2.9%. Small shock there. It didn't do too much, but definitely points in the right directions. We know exactly. We've seen all over the news what's been happening in China. We've seen a lot of issues with the, a lot of so-called issues with the economy that have been coming out. COVID lockdowns, production, issues, people being not held, but people being, forced to take lockdowns, which has hurt productivity as well. But definitely some good signs there. So 2.9%, and we'll continue to watch China in weeks to come. And with the country now being open and with infection rates being so high, it's a pretty normal scenario. We've all seen that when countries opened up, we saw those very high infection rates, but they did taper off, and then things relatively went back to normal. I do remember in Australia this time last year, I think we had over 50,000 cases one day, and there was a lot of issues with so many people being sick. People weren't able to drive trucks, people weren't able to stock shelves, people weren't able to go to work. There was a lot of issues with just general day-to-day productivity, and that was an issue for a while, but it went away. And I feel that will be the same situation in China, and it'll just be a matter of time before things start to settle down there. So some of the other things, the climate count change in the UK came in slightly lower. We had average earnings increased to 6.4% in the UK as well. But the main one that did come in was the inflation, and the inflation, and that was at 10.5%. So it was expected, and it was slightly lower than the last data of 10.7, but it's still 10.5%, and that is a very high number. And we did see, as we just saw before, we did see some, pretty good movement from the pound. So traders are obviously betting that we are going to see potentially, more rate rises coming in the UK. And it's not just the UK. The Fed has also, members from the Fed have also made comments this week, has maybe rattled things a little bit, and we'll get to that in one moment. But firstly, while staying in that area, the ECB have also said that they're going to continue to put rates up, and the last 50-point rate hike, they're not saying will be enough. So we have seen a small recovery today against the US dollar, but the pound this week has been really running its own race. The Australian dollar this week has been very mixed. We have a day higher here. We had a day higher earlier in the week, but then we had that really nice move higher, and then that strong pullback and that sell off, and that affected the Aussie yen as well. So the Aussie yen for a moment did look like it was going to break out after the back of no policy yield adjustment from the Bank of Japan, but that didn't last long, and definitely my idea there didn't work out, and we did see that nice break here, but it was faded, and it was faded very aggressively, and we had a very strong finish lower, and then we had another move lower after that on the day after. So other pairs to the yen, we have seen, is that real big fade, but they did hold up a little bit better than the Australian dollar. So we can see the euro here, it actually held some gains after that fade, and it pulled back from a move lower, and it's stronger today. And the pound as well, similar story there as well. The Aussie was quite heavily affected, and the dollar yen. So the dollar's been quite mixed this week. We'll have a look at the weekly dollar index in a moment, but we can see the fade, a little bit of selling, and then today's buying. The trend definitely still looks looks like it remains lower, and we'll really just need to see now if sellers can get price back to this level and break this low to signal a new trend continuation lower. We don't see any real buy opportunities here. We can see how quickly price was rejected on that move up after the Bank of Japan's meeting this week, and any price movement here to the upside could be positioning, and we'll just have to see if we get another move up followed by a move lower with a good higher low and then a new higher high, just to show that there's pressure on this downtrend from buyers. So talking just quickly about the USD, we can see this week so far there's been a lot of indecision. We had a attempt to break lower by sellers, which was rejected. We're seeing support here at 101, 102 really, just anywhere really from 102 down to 101.85, and there's resistance set up here at 102.44. So on the weekly you can see just how flat the week has been. This can be a sign of indecision after a strong move lower, but we'll keep an eye on that on the weekly chart and just see if something does try to build. If you do believe in mean reversal, we can see that the price is quite a fair way away from the moving averages at the moment, so possibly we could see a trend develop that tries to get back up there to test the moving averages. But first things first, we need to see this hold firm, and then we need to see some buying next week, so we'll keep an eye on that. But for now, we're definitely seeing a range here. Oil continues to have a couple pushes higher today, but it still remains in resistance at 81, that 81 area, and on the weekly chart we can see it's still very range bound at the moment, but it has stopped going down for now. This trend does look to be under a bit of pressure, the sellers trend there, and we are seeing that range here. So if we do see a break higher, it could signal that buyers are trying to start something, and this could be a bit of accumulation, but I don't think it's wide enough yet. And if we do see another move down, it could just continue to be range bound before we get a breakout in the direction. Now we'll just continue on with some of the other markets. So stocks had an interesting week. We saw some very strong moves on European indexes earlier in the week, but that changed on Thursday with that first real strong move lower, and we can just see how nice that trend has been. The German 30 here got all the way back up to 15,272, so that's price levels not seen really since September 22, and things weren't as good on US indexes, and we saw the US 30 here continue to push lower, and we've seen a few decent moves lower, and really the pinnacle was midweek when we had that strong decline down, and yesterday we had a further push down. There's been a bit of news coming out during the week about issues with tech stocks and tech companies. There was reports of payments being withheld, so there still does seem to be a bit of negative news around some of the tech sector in the States, and the Nasdaq wasn't really as badly affected as the Dow top 30 stocks, and we've just seen here 2 days lower after pushing high. But this trend here is really a reflection of how much interest is in tech stocks at the moment. We still talk about this breakout here, this move higher here compared to say the US 30, and we can just see how much stronger this trend has been compared to the Nasdaq, which barely got going there, and it could be even seen as it is in a range at the moment, and that's the new midpoint lower high. Now the other European stocks, so the France 40 as well, which has been a bit of a star lately, it has had a pullback, but like with most, if things still do remain positive for stocks, we don't see why things won't try and continue to return to the upward momentum, and if we do see even a bit of a deeper pullback, it still looks pretty fine after some of the rallies we've seen. So that's a proper leg up, and if we do see a pullback, we'll look for the market to continue unless we see a lower high and a new push lower by sellers. So now just some of the other key comments coming out. So some of the rattling has been around inflation. So the PPI did come out lower than expected, and let's pull that up here. So PPI came in at minus 0.5%, well below expectations. The core PPI came in at minus 1.1%, which was lower than what was expected, and retail sales also missed, which was given as a bit of a reason for a bit of worry and uncertainty. But the Fed continues to come out with comments about inflation remaining high, and they're going to continue to raise rates. So we saw members even this morning making these comments. So I think that is still causing a little bit of nervousness in some of the stock traders' minds at the moment. And this week, to cap off the week before we get on to have a look at cryptos, we just have a couple more comments coming out. So FOMC member Harker is speaking. We have Canadian retail sales coming out. We have ECB comments, and we have the chairman of the Swiss bank, as well as UK retail sales. So none of them are marked as high impact or medium impact, but they're coming out from 6 p.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Time through to 5 a.m. When we have FOMC member Waller speaking, and that will be at 5 a.m. Saturday morning Australian Eastern Daylight Time. So there's been, as we've seen, there's been some good movements this week, but there has been a bit of indecision and a bit of flat trade in other markets. But the yen pairs have been, as exciting as usual, and depending on if you are looking to sell, there has been some good opportunities on the US 30, and gold yesterday was a big mover, adding just on 1.49%, moving back in, briefly touching that 1936 area. So we want to just finish on cryptocurrencies as usual. So we all know that beautiful rally we've seen. We had that pullback the other day, and this still looks like it's continuing to remain around some comments coming out about inflation and rates. Bitcoin retraced all of the sell-off seen after the FTX collapse, and we can see the price hit a high this week. I'll just change that to the weekly. So we can see that price hit a high this week of 21,635, and that took us just above the high set back on the 30th of the 10th last year. And resistance really just still sits at the 20, around that. Sorry, I'll just line this up. The key resistance at the moment looks to be situated, around that 21,450 to 470 area, and would like to see that point, broken, basically, just to signal that there's something more going on here. We spoke about an ending diagonal on Bitcoin on its weekly chart, and it's done everything right so far. It's broken out of that pattern, but now we just need to see buyers take that next step and break above this resistance, and we hopefully start to see a trend moving back up again. So if we do see price move back into this area, we could be looking for a higher low to reignite buyer demand, or we could even see a range develop. If we do see if price does get back down to this area here, and start to test it lower, that's a bit of a worry, and I think there would need to be a decent reason for that to happen at this point in time. But yeah, we're hoping to see maybe a bit of a pullback with a higher low and then a new move higher. Other coins so far this week, it's quite similar to Bitcoin. A lot of them are just sitting at previous resistance points after breaking out of these ranges. And I think there was such a good week last week. I think the market's just trying to digest what is going on at the moment, and if we are really do have the demand that we are hoping to see a new push higher. So a few other coins here. So BNB's been a bit weaker this week so far. Resistance again. It's a similar story across quite a few coins at this stage. And Solana, which had a real nice return to the green after this beautiful rally here. Again, it's just having that pullback. And we'll just like to see if we get that higher low, and if we can make a new extension higher. So even Solana at this stage, after the whole debacle it went through with FTX, it's still it's returned to basically that 50% or just over that 50% point of the entire move down. So still healthy signs, and we'll just need to see if we can get that next leg up to show us that this trend is going to continue. So that's it for today's update. Sorry if it has dragged on for a little bit. As mentioned before, it's just really the medium impact news coming up tonight with a few speakers from a couple of central banks and retail sales from Canadian retail sales, and we also have comments, retail sales from the UK as well. So if we wish you the best for your weekend. If you enjoy our content, please feel free to subscribe, and we continue to have new analysts coming on in the future, so there's always a bit of a mix of opinion and analysis style. So thank you very much for your time. Have a fantastic weekend, good trading, and bye for now.